Zaria is the key, Freeman explained. With your strategic location and the resilience of your people, this planet could become the staging ground for a rebellion that brings the Crocs to their knees. Riel frowned, uncertainty plain on his face. You speak of hope, Captain, but I fear we are too broken to fight. He gestured at the rubble surrounding them. Look at us. We're barely clinging to survival. Freeman clasped Riel's shoulder firmly. I see strength in you, in all of you. And with our technology and your courage, we can achieve the impossible. His eyes gleamed with a fierce drive, an unshakable willpower that sent a shiver down Riel's spine. And so, an unlikely alliance was forged beneath Zaria's shattered skies. Human and Zarian worked side by side, repairing, fortifying, planning for the battles to come. But even as they labored, unseen fractures widened beneath the surface. Zorax and his followers sowed seeds of dissent, their whispers poison in the ears of the fearful and the desperate. Zorax's uprising, the seeds of rebellion. Bloom, as Freeman and his second-in-command, Commander Thorne, pored over star maps and tactical readouts. They spoke in hushed tones of supply lines and strike targets, of the surgical strikes that would cripple the Crocs' war machine. But when Thorne mentioned Zaria's potential as a base, Freeman fell suddenly silent, his eyes haunted. Sir, are you all right? Thorne asked, concern etched on his face. I'm fine, Freeman snapped a bit too quickly. He took a steadying breath. Just old memories. But as he turned back to the maps, his thoughts drifted to darker places, to the Crocs laboratories where he had been imprisoned, experimented on, tortured in ways that still woke him screaming in the night. A cold rage simmered in his gut, a thirst for vengeance that had driven him across the stars. And now, with an entire world hanging in the balance, he couldn't help but wonder, was he truly here to save these people? Or was Zaria merely another means to an end in his own private war? Such troubling thoughts would have to wait. For at that moment, alarm klaxons began blaring across the compound. Freeman and Thorne rushed outside to find the colony in chaos. Zorax and his followers had launched their uprising, seizing control of the generator facilities and other key systems. "Lay down your weapons!" Zorax roared to Freeman, his eyes wild with zealotry. Around him, human and colonist security personnel formed a tense perimeter, weapons locked on each other. "You have 1 hour to leave this planet, or we'll start executing your people." Freeman stepped forward, his expression cold as the void. There would be no negotiations with fanatics, no quarter given to those who would doom an entire world to the Croc's wrath. Reaching slowly for his blaster, he met Zorax's furious gaze with a calm, terrifying tenacity. "Stand down, soldier," he commanded, his voice edged with steel. "Or we will put you down." A heartbeat passed. 2. The air crackled with tension, every single soul in the colony seeming to hold their collective breath. And then, with a wordless battle cry, Zorax lunged forward, energy blade ignited, its amber glow reflecting madly off Freeman's visor as it arced toward the captain's throat. The last stand, battle of ideals and steel time slowed to a crawl as Zorax's energy blade sliced through the air toward Freeman's throat. In that frozen moment, a blur of motion interposed itself between the two men. Riel materialized, arms spread wide. "Stop!" Her voice cracked like thunder, halting Zorax's attack mere inches from her face. "This madness ends now!" Zorax's eyes blazed with fury, but his blade wavered. "Step aside, Riel. These humans will be our doom." "No," Riel countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "They are our salvation." She turned, addressing the gathered crowd of colonists and human soldiers. "Look around you. We were moments from annihilation before the retribution arrived. Captain Freeman and his crew bled for us, died for us." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Riel pressed on, her words gaining strength. "We've all lost so much to the Crocs. Homes, families, entire worlds. But divided we fall. United we have a chance." Some of Zorax's followers lowered their weapons, uncertainty replacing anger in their eyes. Zorax himself faltered, his energy blade flickering and dying. Commander Thorne stepped forward, his face grim. There's more at stake here than you realize. He activated a holographic display, revealing swirling streams of data. Riel and I have been analyzing Crox's communication intercepts. We've discovered something game-changing. The projection coalesced into an image of Zeria, with pulsing red hotspots scattered across its surface. These are deposits of a rare mineral, one the Crocs are harvesting to fuel their war machine. Gasps and exclamations erupted from the crowd. Freeman's eyes narrowed, a cold fire igniting within them. If we can disrupt their mining operation, we could... Their entire conquest, Thorne finished. Freeman nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He turned to Zorax, who still stood frozen in indecision. "Stand down, soldier! I have a proposition for you." Zorax's fingers tightened on his deactivated blade, muscles coiled to spring. But after a long, tense moment, he slowly lowered his weapon. "I'm listening." Freeman outlined his plan. A small joint team of humans and colonists would infiltrate the Crocs mining facility, planting explosives to sabotage their operation. Zorax's eyes widened at the audacity of it. "It's suicide," he growled, but there was a hint of grudging admiration in his voice. "Perhaps," Freeman acknowledged, "but it's our best shot at striking a real blow against the Crocs. Your people know this terrain better than anyone. We need you." Zorax's face twisted through a gamut of emotions, suspicion, anger, and finally, a grim resolve. "I'll lead the colonial contingent myself. Infiltration and betrayal sabotage in the shadows." As the infiltration team began preparations, Riel found herself drawn to Captain Freeman. The human stood apart from the others, staring out at the scarred landscape of Zeria. "You've given us hope," Riel said softly, moving to stand beside him. "Something I thought we'd lost forever." Freeman's expression remained resolute, but his eyes were haunted. "Hope is a dangerous thing, Riel. I've seen what the Crocs do to those who dare to dream." Riel studied his face, seeing the weight of unspeakable memories etched in every line. "You were their prisoner once, weren't you?" Freeman nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "What they did to me. Sometimes I wonder if I'm fighting to save all of the galaxy or just to silence the screams in my head." Riel reached out, her hand hovering near his before gently grasping it. Maybe it can be both. As the infiltration team moved out, led by Zorax and Thorne, tension crackled through the air. They slipped through rocky crevasses and dense foliage, the Crocs mining facility looming before them like a cancerous growth on Zeria's surface. Thorne signaled a halt, his voice low. "Remember the plan. We plant the charges and get out. No unnecessary risks." Zorax grunted an acknowledgement, but his eyes gleamed with a nearly unleashed fury. As they breached the facility's outer defenses, that fury threatened to boil over. Alarms blared. Crocs guards poured from side passages, plasma bolts sizzling through the air as the infiltration team fought their way deeper into the complex. "This way!" Zorax roared, charging ahead. Thorne cursed, trying to maintain formation, but the Zerian warrior was beyond reach. They battled through twisting corridors, leaving a trail of Crocs' bodies in their wake. As they reached the heart of the facility, Zorax skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with shock. Before them stretched a cavernous chamber filled with towering vats of glowing mineral. The stockpile dwarfed anything they had imagined. "By the void," Thorne breathed. "There's enough here to fuel their conquest for decades." Zorax's face contorted with rage and triumph. "Then we end it now." He began frantically rigging explosives, far more than their plan called for. Thorne grabbed his arm. "Stop! You'll destabilize the entire region." "The colony will be safe," Zorax snarled, shoving Thorne away. "Once we obliterate the Croc's power source." As the two men grappled, their comm units crackled to life. Freeman's voice cut through the chaos. "Abort mission. We're detecting seismic instabilities. Get out of there now." But Zorax was beyond reason, his finger hovering over the detonator. The planet's destruction. A gamble with the planet's fate, Freeman raced towards the failing complex, fear and determination warring within him. He had ordered the team to retreat, but Zorax was ignoring that command. He couldn't let the Zerians' distrust doom them all. The facility's collapsing structure mirrored the crumbling alliance. As he and Riel reached the complex, the ground beneath their feet trembled, cracks spider-webbing across the facility's surface. Freeman barked orders into his comm unit, coordinating the evacuation as his mind whirled with calculations and strategies. They burst through the entrance to the heart of the facility. Zorax and Thorn were locked in a deadly struggle, the detonator skittering across the floor. Time seemed to slow as Freeman lunged, his hand outstretched, but Zorax's fingers closed around the device. For Zaria. Zorax shouted, slamming his thumb onto the detonator. A distant rumble grew into a deafening roar as the entire complex shook violently. Freeman grabbed Riel and dove for cover as the floor bucked beneath them. He could only watch in horror as Zorax's reckless act set off a chain reaction of explosions. Abort! All personnel evacuate immediately! Freeman's voice was hoarse as he barked the order. The world around them crumbled. As the complex fell apart, Freeman and Riel fought their way through collapsing corridors, desperate to reach the surface. Debris rained down, pipes burst, and the ground trembled with the force of the impending catastrophe. When they finally emerged into the twilight, the landscape of Zaria was unrecognizable, a nightmare of fissures and chasms. Freeman saw the retribution looming ahead, its engines already spooling up. He half-carried the semi-conscious Zorax up the loading ramp. Go! Get us out of here! Freeman bellowed as soon as they were aboard. The ship lurched into motion. Through the viewport, Freeman watched as the planet's surface fractured and collapsed. The colony's ships were swallowed by the quaking Earth, too slow to escape the catastrophe that Zorax had unleashed. The retribution barely made it into orbit before Zaria's surface imploded, breaking apart into massive chunks that drifted into space. Freeman's heart sank as the planet that had held so much hope was reduced to nothing more than a field of debris. A new hope. Amidst the stars' survival and uncertain futures, even as they broke free of Zaria's gravity well, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. A sensor operator's voice echoed in the chaos. Multiple contacts incoming! It's a Crocs battle group, at least a dozen capital ships. Freeman's blood ran cold. The Retribution was outnumbered and outgunned, with no way to escape. They had survived the planet's destruction only to face annihilation in the cold vacuum of space. As he considered their limited options, it was Riel who broke the silence. Captain, there might be a way, but you're not going to like it. She explained her desperate plan to use the experimental wave disruptor. They had the zephyrite, the rare mineral they had come to Zaria for, but using the weapon could destabilize the planet further and might even destroy the Retribution itself. Freeman weighed the impossible choice before him. Prep a landing team, he ordered. We're going back down there. Minutes later, Freeman led the strike force back to the fractured surface. The planet was nearly unrecognizable, a hellscape of fire and ash. The ground trembled ominously beneath their feet as they searched for any surviving pockets of colonists who might have access to the mineral they needed. Against all odds, they found Zorax huddled with shell-shocked colonists in an underground bunker. Despite everything, Zorax agreed to help, leading them to the last remaining deposits of zephyrite. The extraction was a race against time as the Crocs fleet closed in. Thorn coordinated the operation, but as they prepared to return to the Retribution, alarms blared. The planet's core was destabilizing faster than expected. We don't have a choice, Freeman said grimly. We have to use the disruptor now or we're all dead. Riel and Zorax joined him at the controls. The disruptor hummed to life, its power building to a crescendo. But as Zorax realized the full implications of what they were about to do, he panicked, trying to stop the activation. Freeman intercepted him, the two men grappling as the facility began to shake itself apart. Riel sprinted for the exit, but Freeman knew there was no time. He channeled every ounce of power into the disruptor and initiated the firing sequence. The weapon unleashed a wave of energy that tore through the Crocs fleet and the planet itself. The Retribution barely escaped the resulting cataclysm, limping away from the devastation. As they ascended, Freeman watched as Zaria died, guilt and determination battling within him. He had saved his crew, but at what cost? Aboard the Retribution, the mood was somber. The survivors huddled together, shell-shocked and grieving. Freeman retreated to his quarters, the weight of Xeria's destruction pressing down on him. But even as he mourned, he knew they had to keep moving. The Crocs were still out there, and the true battle was just beginning. As Freeman stared out at the stars, his mind was already planning their next move. They had lost Xeria, but they still had the wave disruptor and the knowledge of the Crocs' weaknesses. The war wasn't over, it was only just beginning.